Today, as a commentator, I wish to highlight the contribution the book makes well beyond the discipline of history, but also to global politics as a gift of not just of hindsight, but also of how to think in time. My own background is in the discipline of international relations and imperial discipline, where I ask how the selective views of the Japanese imperial past is intertwined and continues to disturbingly resonate with the contemporary legitimation of global counter-hegemonic projects, speaking broadly. To put it crudely, there's an ambivalence as to how to evaluate Japanese imperialism. On the one hand are some who condemn Japanese imperialism and colonialism regardless of who it was inflicted by, on the other. On the other hand are those who give a nod to the East-West confrontation and subtly romanticize what Japan did. Yet such dichotomous modes of thought offer little space for a more complex understanding of the transnational history of Japanese occupation and colonization. Anchored in a careful analysis of texts written during the period before, during, and after the occupation, the book traces and reconstitutes the affective dimension of a promise about alternative modernities. What is this promise? It is a promise of a counter-hegemonic project, a grand project of overcoming the West, of the domination of the globe by Western materialism, in this specific context, which was posed at the Dutch colonization of Indonesia. The book recreates the euphoric atmosphere of the moment when the Dutch leaves and the Japanese arrive, captures the sense of the moment which cannot be reduced to mere calculated self-interest, while to be sure, that also was a crucial part of the background. But there was more to it than that. It was a radical moment of uncertainty where what appeared to be universal, the rule of the world by the West, seemed to have been shattered. How should one engage with Japanese imperialism? In this sense, the kind of judgment the actors, who are by definition partial, in contrast to the historians, must exercise is to reflectively judge the particular at a moment when the universal standard ceases to hold. This condition of the absence of a universal is what differentiates two kinds of judgments, to take the Kantian term, determinate and reflective. In the determinate judgment, the universal standard is there, the particular need only to be judged against this standard. In the second kind, this is a judgment exercised by actors who must think in time in the absence of a universal. And in historiography of Japanese imperialism, it tends to assume the kind of a judgment more closer to a determinate kind. So to put it in crude terms and to relate it to the book project, what is deemed as the universal standard is the following. Imperialism, colonialism, domination is to be disavowed. Eisenberg's study of Japan evokes how wanting such determinate judgment is. In hindsight, if one can presume that imperialism is a matter to be universally disavowed rather than seeing it in the context of broader historical currents, we can in the present condemn Japan's occupation of Java. It was a relation of exploitation and appropriation, a geopolitical project inspired by the Japanese military observers of World War I, that the next war is a war which is to be total. In this sense, Java was seen as a crucial source of raw material and energy in the broader geopolitical context where other imperial powers were posing sanctions and cutting off supplies. Yet this results in losing the texture of the moment. The contemporary appropriation of the past wavers between blanket condemnation on the one hand, which reduces the actors as cynical opportunists to collaborators, and of the disturbing romanticization of Japan's war as a moment when the non-Western subjects were awakened to a dream of a world free of Western oppression. As we can see here, the evaluation of imperialism continues to be refracted by assumption about the East-West or the West-non-West dichotomy. And as such, the questions of identity, geopolitics, and strategy coalesce. As Sun Yat-sen famously demanded in his Greater Asianism speech in 1924 Kobe, Japan, the question that we are constantly brought back to ask is, what is Japan? Sun Yat-sen to his Japanese audience demanded for a clarification of whether the Japanese saw the way of the might, Ba Dao, which is associated with the Western way, or the way of the right, Wan Dao, which he associated with the Asian way. What is Japan? Is Japan Western or Eastern? Is Eastern yet guised as Western, or vice versa? But this question of what is also a question asked incessantly by the Indonesian elites. What am I? At the moment when the idea of Indonesian independence is in a pregnant stage, the question of I become a question to myself. What is Indonesia? Here, questions of self-identification match with strategic essentialism in the moment of radical uncertainty and euphoria where what seemed to last forever, the domination of the world by the West, could potentially become history. Might Asia become a subject rather than object of history in the capital H? It is also at this moment where Asia and Indonesia wavers as both concrete sight and message, to borrow Yoshimi Takeushi's phrase. Ethan's work shows how this question of what am I is sought and navigated in time. He vividly reconstructs the atmosphere of the moment to reenact the heady phase, the subsequent unease, and post-independence concealment thereafter. The brilliance of the work lies in its careful reconstruction of the heady moment. It invites the reader to think in time rather than solely as a spectator with hindsight. And it is Takeuchi who, after 1945, refused to let go of that implication of that feeling that he experienced and felt during wartime, to train his eyes on the undeniable desire he felt, the euphoria he felt, as that is something which cannot be solely explained away as wartime brainwashing or cynical opportunism. For he was certain that without coming to terms with that gush of desire and euphoria, the affected promise, the reflection on Japan's past will never be complete. It will never be complete. The transnational history of the encounter between the Japanese and the Indonesians during this Japanese occupation of Java, seen in this way, vividly enables a reader to live and sink that moment of radical uncertainty, to associate the reader to the position of not just as a historian who benefits from the gift of hindsight, but that of the actors who are without the gift of the hindsight, who nonetheless had to navigate, think, and act in time amidst this affected promise. In this sense, Ethan's transnational history invites the reader towards a second kind of judgment, that of the reflective judgment, where, while acknowledging the historicity of the very concept of the universal, be it the civilizing mission or the dream of anti-Western project of overcoming the West, he invites us towards thinking reflectively. This is to be mindful of the gift of the hindsight, yet to train one's eyes on the very fact of our human condition, that we think and judge in time as partial actors. Thank you.